Welcome to Rough Drafts, How God Writes His Love in Our Stories, a podcast that explores the faith journeys of our friends and neighbors in Burns, Tennessee. Everyone has a story to tell, and in this podcast, we'll hear powerful and inspiring stories of how God works in the ordinary lives of people like you and me. Our stories are unfinished and perfectly imperfect. They are just rough drafts, a glimpse of what is to come because God is still at work, writing plot twists, introducing new characters, and bringing good even from the most challenging circumstances. Join us as we see what God is up to in our stories. Here's your host, Matthew Hyatt.
Well, friends, get ready for what may be the worst episode of this podcast ever. It may be unending, it may be eternal, because you have the popes of three congregations sitting in one room. How's that?
As long as Steve Baggett's still on staff at Walnut Street, I can't take that position yet.
Well, do you want to introduce yourselves? You think that'd be better?
You know what? That's a pretty astounding introduction as it is right now. So, but I don't know. I'll give it a shot. I'm Thomas Southerland. I'm the minister of the Water Street Church of Christ in Charlotte, Tennessee.
I'm Chris McCurley, serve as the preaching minister at the Walnut Street Church of Christ in Dickson, Tennessee.
And my face is on this podcast, so if you haven't figured out who I am yet, you're hopeless, and there's no sense even trying. So, Chris, you've got a podcast.
I do.
That's actually good.
Well, thank you. You've been on it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
They don't have an off week.
Well, no, it was actually really good when you came on there and talked about unity. And, Thomas is going to be on there. He doesn't know it, but he'll be on there eventually.
Oh, he'll be so much better than me.
No,
he'll be good.
No.
Thomas has good things to say. I'm just an idiot.
No. I mean, well, they edited a few things out.
Yeah,
it was very good.
Yeah, now people want to. Is there a director's cut somewhere they can access?
Yeah, the bloopers. No, we've done Dear Church for it started in Abilene when I was there, a ministry called Ripple of Light. It's an internet ministry. Their idea is, Jesus went to where the most people were, which was the marketplace, and the internet is where the most people are. It's the modern day marketplace. And so Ripple of Light does internet ministry. And they came to me and they said, we're kind of trying to expand and be more like kind of like Gospel Coalition, where you have a lot of different articles and podcasts. And so my response was, what's a podcast?
Yeah.
I really did not know what a podcast was.
I'm not sure most of our listeners know either.
So I get on there and it's evolved from there. And then when I came to Walnut Street, one of the questions the elders asked me before they hired me is they said, could you bring the podcast with you?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so we built a studio, and Ripple of Light still produces it from Abilene. We just, as you know, we log in with them every week, and they produce it and churn it out, and it's done well.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes so people can find that. And
appreciate that.
You've had a lot of good guests on that show.
Thank you.
Chuck's been there with you, our associate.
Yep.
Wes McAdams, Chad Fuzzle.
Yeah. We got some regulars. Wes is a good friend of mine from the Abilene days. He's on there quite often. And then, been able to meet some neat guys. Brian Bates, who hosts the Nate Land podcast, Nate Bargatze.
Oh, yeah.
Had him on this week, and he was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
And it's amazing how many, we don't regulate it just to church people necessarily. Right. But, Brian's a member of Harpeth Hills in Nashville, and so I didn't even know that. And so it's been, we try to tackle some difficult topics and some, things that are going on current event-wise, but more than anything, we just like to talk about things that maybe you can't necessarily spend a lot of time on from the pulpit.
Yeah, that's what I like about this medium. We can have conversations that don't really fit anywhere else in church.
Exactly.
One of the reasons we started this was we wanted people to be able to tell their stories. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those stories, they don't fit in a sermon. They don't fit in a Bible class. It's not the right venue. I don't know. There's just some power in that. Thomas, you used to be here.
Oh, yeah. So I attended Burns here for, I don't know, from the time I was about 13 years old up until I was in my early 20s or so.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the folks that I knew back then are gone now, passed on and things.
Do you have an alibi?
Do I? Well, listen, there's a lot of people that I love here very much. And this is, my dad is passed away now, but when he and my mom divorced, he started coming here. Both my parents were members of the church here. So I got extra family kind of in the immediate family and extra church family too, because I got to attend different congregations too.
It's cool. And to have Water Street and Walnut Street in the same room.
Everybody gets them confused.
Yeah, they really do. And it's just, it's good for us to get. I wish I'd thought of it. We could call Doug Couch and had him come in here.
Yeah.
Actually, I only have 3 microphones, so I guess we would have to figure something out. But
we'd have to do a Beatles kind of thing where we share a microphone.
That's right. Get a little
John and Paul kind of thing.
Thomas says he has personal space issues. The podcast, if you've heard it, we always tell God stories. And one of the things that I love about my job is I have a front row seat to a lot of cool God stories. Yeah. So I was just curious if you guys would be willing to share a little bit about how you have seen God in ministry. I think sometimes we get so busy telling other people's stories and God's stories that we don't get to tell some of our own. And sometimes our own are a little bit safer to tell somewhere that's not at home. So, I don't know how you want to go with this, but I just thought this is going to be a fun conversation.
Take it away, Chris. We're just all ears.
You hear that coming?
Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is, if you ask anybody I went to high school with, if you thought Chris McCurley would be the preacher at the Walnut Street Church of Christ in Dickson, Tennessee, they would have laughed you off the face of the earth. My parents, I grew up in a kind of a dysfunctional home. My parents divorced when I was 16, and my grandfather was the spiritual head of our household and raised me Catholic. He was raised in a Catholic orphanage. That's all he knew, and raised me that way. My mother was devout, but application was tough for her, if that makes sense. She was all about it, but living it was a little harder.
Yeah.
My grandfather was very much a spiritual, just bulwark in my life. I mean, just in every way, he was just an awesome guy. My priest and I were very close. I thought I wanted to be a priest, and he got in trouble. I guess I was about 18 and was taken away. And, I was kind of rebelling at that point. My parents had divorced when I was 16, like I said, and so I just, you rebel against the things that your folks place the most emphasis on, and my mom placed a lot of emphasis on church and everything. And so, met a girl, was dating a girl. I was doing some things I shouldn't have been doing, all that kind of stuff, and sowing my wild oats. And met Libby, my wife. We've been married almost 30 years, and she was raised at 7th and Boulder Church of Christ in Paragould, Arkansas, where she lived, and Church of Christ was not on my radar. I was willing to go a lot of places, but not the Church of Christ. In the Catholic Church, I was president of the CYO, which was Catholic Youth Organization in the state of Arkansas, for 2 years. And I was very involved. And we would do something on Wednesdays called Soup and a Sermon, where we'd have different preachers from the community come in and speak. The Church of Christ would never come.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, they're elitists. I don't want anything to do with them. But like a pretty girl can do, she persuaded me, and I went to church with her and Willie Sandlin. Do you all remember Willie Sandlin?
Yes, absolutely.
So he was the youth minister preaching right at me. And everybody there, just about, I knew. It was like, wow, these are all my neighbors and friends. And I took the head coaching position at Cord Charlotte in Charlotte, Arkansas. Moved there and started going to the little Church of Christ there, 50 people probably.
Yeah.
And had the preacher come over one night, and I just said, what does Church of Christ doctrine say about this? And he finally said, Chris, I don't have Church of Christ doctrine.
Yeah.
He said, I got a Bible. That's all you need, And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense because I didn't grow up that way.
Yeah.
I grew up piecemealing the Bible. I didn't really realize it all fit together until later in life. And so the more I focused and concentrated and studied, the more I realized, wow, this is one long story, right? And this has got some meat to it that I really can buy into. So I was baptized in 1997. I was 24 years old. And, was coaching at this little town, and ministry kind of fell in my lap. I was able to get into youth ministry, go back to Harding University and study a little bit. And,
Man, that's really amazing when you look. I think that probably a lot of people can benefit from the same thing, same story experience you've had. The Bible is what you need.
Yeah.
I think
it was just simple because everything else when I was growing up, you added something, right? You needed something else. The Bible was the Bible, but it wasn't really enough, right? Because, and I say this all the time, I don't bash my upbringing. I think my grandfather did it's not like my grandpa said, I'm going to raise him so that he misses out on heaven. I'm just going to raise him in a religion that, because I sincerely want to see him go the opposite way of what God wants him to do. I don't think that at all. I tend to look at my upbringing like a running head start. It was incomplete. In some ways, it was, in my mind, since I've studied, I feel like it was even wrong in some respects, but I don't think we accomplish anything by bashing and things like that. And I still have a lot of things that I learned in my Catholic upbringing that I live out this day. That I think people would find that odd, but it's absolutely there's some things that are biblical that we need.
If we say that we can't learn anything from the Catholics, we're just being arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple of years ago with the not the Couch 5K, the Give and Gobble 5K in Dickson. We were running down College Street. Remember that route runs right by the Catholic church in town, and I was following a guy who was in front of me, and I was kind of dying going up that hill. And I nearly ran into the back of him because when he got to the church, he stopped where he was, dropped to a knee, knelt, and made the sign of the cross as he went past the church.
Yeah.
And, I don't see the church as a holy place in the way that perhaps he did, but I was moved by the fact that he interrupted his 5K to show a sign of respect to his faith. And I thought, that's not maybe how I would do it, but I've got to appreciate the heart of that.
Yeah, a lot of folks won't even interrupt their dinner to do it, saying a prayer beforehand.
Yeah. It's just one of those, I literally nearly ran over the guy. What made me laugh was I thought, well, that's going to be a great headline. Church of Christ guy kicks a Catholic in the back and pushes him down while he's praying. That's the way this is going to
We would have all been suspicious,
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the biggest thing it taught me is the focus on Jesus, the cross, the passion,
Amen.
On holy days, during Easter, Palm Sunday, or, you go through the stations of the cross, and, those kind of things were very impactful, because he did die. He did rise again. And so that was very impactful. Anyway, I still hold on to some of those principles and things, but I'm grateful to be where I am because I feel like I have grown with the help of a lot of different people over the years.
Yeah.
You talk about a God thing. God has placed people in my path to bring me to this point and continues to do so.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing what he can do.
Just no doubt.
With just the raw material in any situation. And
no doubt.
He's just amazing.
So about you, Thomas, what's the short version for you?
Okay, well, it's a lot like Chris's story minus the Catholic stuff.
Okay.
So the when I was in Bible hour, when I was, I don't know, 6th grade or something like that, we were at Pomona Church of Christ right over here in Pomona. And we had they did a wedding, like a minister marrying a couple. So this was an elder and a deacon, or a deacon and his wife, rather, that were...
I was wondering for a second.
Yeah, it wasn't an elder and a deacon and his wife that were in their tuxedo and wedding dress, acting like they were getting married. They were showing how a minister married a couple and trying to teach a lesson on marriage. At the end of it, the minister that was performing this was Roy Beard, our associate minister. And there's probably 40 kids in the class, and to all the boys, he said, now, how many of you young men want to be a minister when you grow up? And I looked around, and so many of my buddies, they all raised their hand. And I just remember thinking, not me. I didn't raise my hand. I was like, not me. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I felt that way for a long time.
Do you still feel that way?
Well, from time to time
during deacons meetings?
Okay. But I relate to the book of Jonah. If you're going to write a book of the Bible and it's going to be about you, are you going to write it like that?
No.
Everything about Jonah is bad. I mean, he's mean, he's vindictive, he's angry at God, he's disobedient. And listen, if I'm writing a book about me, I'm going to write about a lot of good stuff. But you see that in the Bible, like Peter, he's a fisherman. He never catches any fish.
Yeah.
It's a book of failures.
Yes.
Isn't it?
But Jonah he ran from God. And God had a purpose for him in his life, and God was able to use that. I just felt the same way. I felt like I ran so much of my life from what God he had a purpose for me to do. I feel inadequate in the ministry, and I feel like, why would God choose me for this? But it's amazing, like I was telling Chris, what God can do with any material if you're willing to do it.
I agree.
And that's kind of, if you wanted my story in a nutshell, that's it. It is humbling. I look back at my past, and I'm not proud that I ran, that I was a Jonah. Yeah. But I'm amazed that God can take somebody that was like me and still use him for his glory.
And that's good.
It is good.
That'll preach. Do you want to offer an invitation now?
Yeah, let's just stand and sing.
Okay, there was just as I am.
I think that, the God stories that really impress me that you're talking about, a lot of times they're not the the bright, shiny accomplishment stories. A lot of times it's in the tragedy of things or the difficulty of things that I see God working and moving. And for instance, I had a good friend that went through some very difficult and horrible abuse, and this changed her. It just changed everything about her life. And I mean, there's no glamour, there's no success story there. But she attended services every time the doors were open for classes and services and Wednesday nights and Sunday nights, and she was faithful in that. And over the years, we just got to see her grow and stabilize, because the things that they had gone through, it was just very difficult. But we would sing a song, Sing and Be Happy, and her voice would just soar. And I would think, of all songs for her to just belt out, why that one? What she got to be happy about? And I'll never sing the song the same way again. Trust him who leads you. He's keeping your soul. And in all the mess and all the tragedy and all the horrible stuff, she trusted in God. God was able to do something with that. That's just that's the stuff that amazes me. What God is able to do even through tragedy, like Job, or a lot of Bible stories like that.
I feel like we get to be on the front row watching some of the coolest stuff happen.
Yeah.
Like right now for me, you guys both know James and Harriet. And Harriet is, neck deep in her Alzheimer's. She's such a good little actress. She acts like she knows you every Sunday, but she does not have a clue. And James is in a lot of pain. He's back issues, and just age is, I don't particularly want to make it old age. I've watched enough people. It doesn't look like a whole lot of fun to me. Yeah. So, but every Sunday that he walks in, it's just a testimony to faithfulness. And this year I preached through Job, and after service each week, he would thank me.
Wow.
And he would say, should I accept good from the Lord and not harm?
Yeah.
And I thought, why'd I even bother preaching? James just said one sentence from the book, and it did more for my soul than the hours of study. But watching that faithfulness, we get to see. And what's so neat about James's story is it's not dramatic. It's just day in, day out, good.
Yeah.
What's that Eugene Peterson book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction?
Yeah.
Like you said, Thomas, I think so often we look for the grandiose and the big.
Yeah.
And what's the way to make the biggest impact that causes the most ripples? And a lot of times it's just that slow, methodical, plodding, shuffling, just a long obedience in the same direction. Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah. I think that hits the nail right on the head. I've got another close friend that was, when he first became a Christian, he was very set on doing something great, doing something grand, and God making something special out of me. And after years of growth and Bible study and maturity, he told me the other day he was talking about being a servant and being humble, and it wasn't about him. And I was just thinking, man, that's God shaping and molding. It's less of self and more of thee, like the old song we sing.
Right.
Well, we prefer to sing the first verse.
Yes.
All of self and none of thee.
Yeah.
And I always loved it when a guy at Freed Hardeman led the first verse of that one day before chapel. I think we may have missed the point today.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so, we see the mundane, but we also see the tragic, and we also see the amazing. I'm just curious, what's it like for you to walk beside people going through? You've had the experience of doing the horrible funeral. You've also had the experience of standing in front of the camera with the big check, smiling. You've had both. Tell me a story of one of those, or how it's formed you.
I don't know. I have difficulty bringing one thing to mind, but the thing that becomes a recurring theme with me is really the glory of the cross, or the Jesus Christ and his death, because every time we baptize a brother or sister into Christ, that's the thing that's held up in such great regard. And that's the joy, and that's the angels in heaven are rejoicing. That's the great thing. Every
time I baptize somebody, I feel like, can I really do this?
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like a big enough moment for what's happening. You know?
I think you're right. I think it was Alexander Campbell. His baptism service was about 7.5 hours long.
Oh, good Lord.
Now,
hope that water was warm.
yeah, well, I think they dipped you straight down, like they pushed your head down, all right? Maybe we don't go 7.5 hours, but maybe we don't go 3.5 minutes either.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's a big deal. But those are the moments, or when someone repents, or it's almost like a child being born. Man, it's a big celebration. Those are the moments of great glory. That's not really, from my perspective, a thing of accomplishment on our part, or even necessarily the person who's being baptized, but it's really just a spotlight on Jesus Christ and his redemption. I don't know if that's a good answer to the question, but I just see that a lot.
Yeah.
That's the recurring thing that happens a lot. It's not just one event, but it's like the same thing over and over and over again. When a soul gets saved, we can glorify Jesus Christ.
And preaching and teaching, those light bulb moments are really cool.
Mm-hmm.
In jail, when I first started doing jail ministry, I had a guy, and when they come in, we call it church, just come do church. Who wants to come do church today? So they come in, sit down, and I almost always just start by saying, what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? Because a whole lot of times there is something, and let's just deal with that instead of me bringing in whatever Burns heard Sunday.
Yeah.
And a guy said, it's about December, and I've heard this is when people think about the birth of Jesus, but I don't know that story. Could you tell it to me?
Yeah.
And how cool was that? It was the Charlie Brown Christmas special. It was happening right there, live. But like, how often you get to tell somebody that story? That was so cool. What about you, Chris? What you thinking?
Well, it's been an interesting year, and for me, I had a grandbaby born.
Congratulations.
So that was exciting, and around the same time, you're dealing with a health issue, and so it really, it's been such a blessing because I have been the one that walks with people when they're facing difficulty, debilitating disease, end of life kind of stuff. To get a taste of that from your from a personal standpoint, and to be on the other side of the desk, so to speak, that has helped me tremendously. It's made me more empathetic, probably made me a better minister in a lot of ways. So that's been one thing this year that has been probably the biggest, I don't know, it's been a big asset. It's helped me tremendously to be a better minister. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But also, I'm always amazed that people listen to what I have to say.
It's baffling that they would be
baffling
willing to sit in church and listen to
exactly that somebody will bring up something from 5 years ago, and that's just still in my Bible. Look here, I wrote it down. I'm like, man, people actually listen to what you have to say.
Yeah,
pretty scary.
It is scary, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
That's a lot on your shoulders.
Better get it right.
But like you alluded to a while ago, I don't believe I'm here under my own volition.
Yeah.
In some ways, I believe I chose this, but in a lot of ways, I was picked up and placed in this position, and because I can look back on this journey and say, there's no possible way I did this. And so my prayer every day is basically, don't screw this up. You've put me here, you've given me an opportunity and an ability, and I need to make the most of it, because again, what I've learned this year is you may not have much longer to do it, so make the impact while you can. And I think the way I've framed it lately is outlive your life.
Yeah. We haven't had a whole lot of conversation in Churches of Christ about calling. That wasn't our language.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a biblical idea. We've made a choice, but God also has brought us to where he's brought us. And I don't know how all those things work exactly.
Well, people ask me today, would you like to coach again? And I go, I couldn't.
Yeah.
There's no way I could do that. I can't go back now. Now that I've done this for so long and been doing it, even if I got sick and tired of it, I don't see that happening or burned out or whatever. No, I've got to do this. This is a Jeremiah thing now.
Yeah.
It's a fire in my bones that I've got to do.
I can relate. That's just a strange thing, and I guess you can too.
Yeah.
it's just one of those things I can't imagine not preaching. I can imagine not doing it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's days where you're like, I can't stand humans anymore. But like the idea of not retirement is a little bit terrifying to me because I don't know how, like, I know I don't want to work 7 days a week till I keel over.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to not.
And the window's kind of, for preachers, I mean, there's this window, and I feel like I'm in it at 50.
Yeah.
50 to 60 is kind of the wheelhouse. I mean, that's kind of the sweet spot for preachers because you've lived long enough to get some experience, and you feel like you're kind of coming into your own, figuring this out a little bit. But then about 60, 65, if you're not ready to retire, they're ready to retire you a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so that scares me, that part of it. And so I feel like I'm trying to squeeze in a lot of usefulness.
Yeah. I want to make these years count.
Exactly.
I don't hear people talk about that ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had this conversation. But there feels like a really narrow band when we can do our best work.
Yeah.
It's insane to me that they let us preach, Thomas, because you and I both started when we were like 21,
Yeah. There was, I think, a shortage of a lot of ministers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we may throw some guys in there before we were ready. And I don't think I was necessarily ready.
I sure wasn't.
At the time.
No.
But I'm glad that I did start because you learn a lot.
Yeah. I don't know how you'd learn it other than by doing it.
Well, when you can learn under good leadership, that's a big thing, too.
Yeah.
So.
James Hinkle was my training wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, without that, we would have set fire to the place. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But sometimes, man, you got to be 35 to be president. There's part of me that's not sure that shouldn't work for ministry. I just don't know how that would actually work.
I don't know. It's amazing that God can do different things with different people. Young men in the Bible. You got God that uses a lot of the young men. Naaman.
Going all Josiah on me, aren't you?
Well, yeah. But Naaman's little servant girl.
Yeah.
That's somebody that's just nameless. Who knows what happened? It must have been horrible and tragic in her life. And yet God used her to point him towards the prophet.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing what God can do regardless of age and stuff. So I don't think we need to limit him on that.
You're absolutely right.
No?
You're absolutely right. I do find my inspiration in preaching from Balaam's talking donkey. I feel like that's my role model for ministry.
The kids love that one, by the way.
Man, how has ministry changed for you guys since COVID? For me, the change to doing some online stuff, that was, I don't know, that was, whatever. It wasn't all that bad. Losing some people, that was tough. But two things that I found to be toughest. I feel like the world is crankier than it was pre-2020. And I feel like I've dealt with more of that stuff since then. And the other thing, I found that visiting is harder in a way because pre-COVID, I knew where I was supposed to go and when I was supposed to go. Okay, if a person over 50 is in the hospital, I'm supposed to go. If they're there overnight, I should show up. But post-COVID, do you go visit the new mom and baby in the hospital or do they want you there? Do they not? Like, a lot of stuff changed. I'm just curious what y'all's experience of that might be.
Yeah. Well, coughing in public's done. Can't do that anymore. I know that's changed. I feel like COVID was a purging to some degree.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing. I know for me, I was at a church that was growing and grew during COVID at that time. I was in Abilene, and there were a lot of churches that were struggling. Sometimes because of their own choices. And so we were gaining a lot of people before COVID, and we had a television program that we were doing every week anyway.
Yeah.
And so people were staying home watching this television program going, I'm going there when I get done. And so we grew dramatically during and after COVID.
Yeah.
So we had an opposite experience that a lot of churches have. But I was on the school board at the same time too. And definitely people got crankier and much more stressed. It was a bad deal.
Yeah.
People were ugly, even Christians. And so that was different. And then like you said, people didn't want to commingle a lot.
Yeah.
They didn't want to They didn't want to be together as much. And so even if they came to church, they were gone pretty quick.
Yeah.
And there was not a lot of hanging out. And but I think the biggest thing, overarching in all of that, was most people realized we got to be together.
Yeah.
For me, for about 2 weeks, that was nice.
Yeah.
And after about 2 weeks, I'm like, I got to have people. I got to have my church. I can't do this. And the reason it was nice for me, because my kids were at Harding at the time, and they were home because Harding let loose and everybody went home. And, they came home, and it was nice having them there worshiping with them on the couch.
You liked having them for 2 weeks, and then you had enough. Is what?
Yeah, well, yeah. I would rather us been in a pew.
That's right.
That just made me think of the little worships. We'd have like small worship service, just, with the family and maybe a neighbor or two during COVID around the kitchen table. And I love that. Occasionally we get to do it on snow days too.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those days. It's just small, it's intimate, and I miss being with a larger congregation, but I don't know, just it's a little bit different. So
It was neat to do the house church thing for a little while. And I mean, I know that's a whole separate conversation about institutional church, house church, but it did make me think there was something there that we have missed that we need to figure out how to.
Yeah.
Well, we're such a traditional people too.
Yeah.
Much of what we do is based in tradition. And it did allow for a lot of churches to say, you know what, let's reevaluate how we do things. And even coming out of COVID, we don't have to do it the way we've always done it. And you see a lot of churches now since they've come out of COVID, not doing Bible class on Sunday morning, but doing it on Sunday night, or meeting in homes on Sunday nights, or whatever.
It helped us launch small groups. And for us, I mean, it's been one of the most dramatic successes. When I first came to Burns, our Sunday morning attendance was averaging in the 80s, and Sunday night was 42. We grew to the point where our Sunday morning average attendance, the last year that we had Sunday nights, our average Sunday morning attendance was probably 195. Mm-hmm. Our average Sunday night attendance was, would you like to guess? 42.
Yeah.
Wow. It was the same 42 people.
Yeah.
COVID, when it killed Sunday nights, we brought back small groups. Immediately, we started with 120 in small groups on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, Sunday afternoon. And, it hadn't always been that good, but we never would have gotten around to doing that had we not had that stressor that caused us to innovate a little bit there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm not saying that's the answer for everybody, and but it forced us to innovate. We never would have gotten around to trying to do online stuff. This podcast probably wouldn't happen if we hadn't started.
Think about how many small churches, like in the 50s to 100 members, that were able to adapt and adjust and do Facebook Live and things like that. And, they're reaching people they never would have reached before.
Yeah.
And, the joke was we all became televangelists overnight. But, I mean, it really was a neat thing to see, even the smaller churches figuring technology out and using it in a profound way.
We didn't know what we were missing in a lot of ways. Pre-COVID, we already had the online Facebook streaming thing. The ball was rolling. We had some plans, but I mean, COVID did give us some time to really kind of expand that a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to me, as we have some of our congregation that's aging, people that are in their 90s, they don't drive anymore. They don't get out anymore. And that is their opportunity to be there in a virtual sense. A lot of times they got to have their kids or grandkids come over and set it up so they can watch. But without that, they feel completely disconnected from the local church, except for the occasional visit that you get. So that was a huge help for us, where we were reaching people that we just never thought about reaching them in that way. So
it gives people a window to peek into the church, decide if they want to be part of it.
Yeah, you can go back and look at archives and things like that.
Which is why I never can run for office. People will find those and hear the things that I've said.
So many people won't go to a congregation, though. They won't go that first time because they don't know what the inside of the place looks like. They don't know where they're going to sit. They don't know if we're handling rattlesnakes. They don't have any idea what's going on. If you can watch it happen a couple times, hey, people kind of know what to expect. They've seen it. They can go in, and it eases their mind a little bit, especially if you've got someone who is just a first-time visitor, who is not a churchgoer, that kind of thing.
I mean, they get to find out if they're going to get screamed at the whole time. Like, they get to find out what we're like when we're not putting on airs for them.
I try to keep that one Sunday a month, the mad preaching.
Yeah, the mad preaching. Do you schedule that on the calendar?
No.
The other obscure thing that it did, which is this really isn't something that plays to the audience, but I thought I was going to retire in Abilene, Texas. And when the opportunity came to come and talk to the elders here, they had watched hundreds of sermons.
Yeah.
So they were able, you no longer have the preaching carousel where you bring 3 guys in and
this is so much better.
Yeah. So now you can go online and you can just see, do we even want to talk to this guy? We'll watch 4 or 5 sermons of his. And we're like, yeah, or no.
The church tryout sermon is one of the dumber things we've ever done. Everybody should have one good sermon.
Yeah.
So you go to a church, you preach your one good sermon, and then half the people like you, half the people you don't. You move.
Yeah.
You need to find out what my third Sunday in July is like.
Just show up randomly. I had an eldership do that one time many years ago when I was in Missouri. Just showed up on a Sunday. And of course, our church was rather small then, and they stuck out like a sore thumb.
They always do. It is so funny. You've had that experience too, where somebody comes
the scouts,
in.
right?
Yeah, the scouts, and they'll come in and they always try to sit near the back. But they're obvious, like they're taking notes usually, and they're cagey about. What brings you to town today? And I've gotten to where when I realize, I start asking the questions to try to put them in the spot where they've either got to lie or admit what they're doing. It's just so much fun.
Well, I'm past that stage. Nobody does that anymore.
Oh, yeah, whatever. Because of the online thing. Another thing from that COVID era, I think we found out that preaching itself actually works fairly well online. Online video is a pretty good medium for conveying information.
Absolutely.
But what online video is terrible at is relationship and fellowship. And to me, I think we'd be really wise if we continued learning some lessons. How do we use these mediums for teaching purposes so that our time together can really be for edification, encouragement, relational purposes? Because you can't do that one online.
During COVID, we were showing, like everybody did, the live streaming, and we had the songs up there.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see the song later. You just saw the songs, and somebody commented on the live stream, is there any way we can see the song leader and the audience? It's like I'm not even there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point. You're not there.
Yeah, you're not there.
And that's the whole point. This is a good plan B.
Yeah.
For now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stopgap. But the best plan A, is to be together, because all those one another passages that Paul talks about, you can't practice them in your recliner.
No.
You got to be in it, at church. So.
Why are you glad you're a minister?
This may sound really, really selfish and silly, but I don't know how faithful I would be if I'm not a minister.
I get that 1,000%.
You know what I mean? I know that some people would say, wow, Chris, that's a really terrible answer, but I don't know.
It provides accountability. It holds our feet to the fire. We were talking before the show started about the things that we don't post to Facebook because of what our job titles are.
Yeah.
But it's probably better for our souls that we didn't post them anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that is one of the biggest things is I have been able to get paid to study the Bible, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I've had opportunities I never would have had before to go places and preach in places I never would have had the opportunity. I've had the opportunity to meet people the best people I know are people from the church, some that aren't, but the best relationships I have are with church people. And, I think many times it's believed that the minister is kind of above the fray and, he's kind of got this figured out and he's the figurehead. And, man, I struggle like everybody else. And the fact that I can rely on you guys and other people in the church and that I can get my soul fed each week, I don't think people realize that. I don't think they realize what they're doing for me. It's all about what you've done for us, and I appreciate that. But I don't think they realize I got to have you. If I didn't have you, I wouldn't make it.
Knowing that I have to talk to you causes me to say out loud the things that I need to hear myself say out loud. I believe in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead when I'm standing by an open grave.
Yeah,
I know that I have to say that to you because it's my job to. But I get to hear me say it to me.
Yeah.
And I need that just as much that person that funeral home does.
Help me preach the sermon I need to hear. That's my prayer every Sunday right before I get up. God, help me preach the sermon I need to hear.
I thought it was really your plan was really to tell Steve that day. Was that not it? Did I get that confused?
That's another episode.
Oh, okay. Thomas, what about you? Why are you glad to do this exotic, high-paying, sexy career?
Well, maybe it's a lot of the same way Chris was talking about. I love Bible study. I mean, I absolutely love it, and I wouldn't do it as in depth. And I always tell people, teach a class.
Yeah,
you'll learn more than the students will just because you got to go over the material. And I absolutely love studying the Bible. It is my favorite thing to do. So, if I was not working as a minister, I wouldn't be doing that near as much. And I just lose out on so much. So that's a big deal.
I wish y'all could hear how Thomas is smiling, like while he says, I love to there.
Thomas just excites me because, so you ever be around people, they're just infectious. I think and sorry to get off on this topic, but I think one of the biggest keys to success for a minister is that he fits the culture of the place he's at.
Yeah, you are perfect for
Thomas is perfect for Water Street. And if I were not the minister at Walnut Street, I would probably divide my time between Water Street and Walnut Street because I love the people at Walnut Street, but I'd probably go there on Sunday morning, there on Sunday night or something,
Well, it's funny. I love both of your congregations. And over the years, people have said, don't you wish you could get a job working at a Walnut Street or something? Because people assume that preachers want to go to bigger churches.
Yeah.
And my answer is, no, I'm not the right fit. I'm too weird for Walnut Street, okay? And I know that. And Burns is a weird little church, and I love that
in a
we
good
get
way.
to be. I mean that 1,000% in a good way. 9,999%. It's good.
Years ago, when Jeff Coons and they did a poll of some of the people that would come in, and they would just ask them unofficially, well, what do you think about today? And they would record the answers. The elders would record. I can't remember who all was the elders then, Jeff and Bert. And I can't remember if David was still here at the time or if he had passed on. But the number one answer that everybody said about Burns was the people.
Yeah.
The people. And it's something about this community and stuff. That's a big attraction to the folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to say they're weird. Weird in a good way, though.
Weird can be fun. Yeah, weird can be special.
They're good folks.
We had 38 Churches of Christ in Abilene, town of 125,000, but 38 Churches of Christ. And very few of them did anything together. Not all of them even got along. And then I come here and, there's not as many in the county or even in Dickson, but I have good relationships with everybody.
Yeah.
Really good relationships. Like not even like just we're cordial. No, I mean, I feel like I can call anybody up at, that's ministering at those churches and just talk about, ministry or go get lunch or whatever. And I that's a big blessing for me.
And in a community like Dickson where everybody knows everybody, it could go the other way.
Everybody's related to
Really? Yeah, you can't talk about anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know so many of the elders in the churches and the different congregations and stuff, and so many good men, really good leadership, and I love that fact. I mean, I know that's not the case in a lot of congregations, and I just feel like I see a lot of good leadership out there. I'm glad we can.
I think there's a genuine non-compete clause with every church in town. We don't compete. I think we all are in it for the right reasons. Now I don't know everybody, but the ones that I know, and even the ones I don't know, I hear good things. But I knew Chuck, your new associate, before you even moved here.
Yeah.
And then getting to know you since I've gotten here, and Thomas, y'all were some of the first people I met. The first 6 months here I did without my wife. I call it, I did a 6 month stretch without my, like I was in prison or something without my wife. And I moved here in November of 2022. And if you remember November of 2022, it rained every day.
Yeah.
And my wife and I grew up close to Memphis, so not far from here. And I forgot it got dark at like 4 o'clock. And, feel like I'd moved to Russia. It was bleak and rainy and it was tough. And I don't think y'all realize how much y'all helped me during that time. And, Steve Baggett was just a godsend. I mean, that guy,
he's great.
He does not have an ego to bruise, you know what?
No. And Steve, to the non-compete point, I think people would be surprised if they knew how often Steve would make a phone call and he would say, I hear so-and-so and so-and-so have started worshiping with you. And sometimes he'd say things like, we never could figure out the right spot, but this is one of their talents.
Yeah.
And it was not, it wasn't gossip. It wasn't checking. It was trying to help people land. And like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's been people for whom Burns wasn't a good fit who've done well at Water Street.
Well, same thing here. I had a young man we baptized one week at Water Street, and he's been attending at Walnut Street ever since. And the people that are there have reached out to him. He's fit in with the classes, and I'm just like, that's terrific.
Hallelujah.
I don't feel like we've lost anything.
No.
He's the kingdom is gained, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we trying to advance the kingdom of Walnut Street or the kingdom of God?
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know that people really believe that we mean what we're saying here, but I know that the three of us do, and
Absolutely.
the leaderships of these churches do.
I mean, the world's a better place. Dickson County's a better place when all three of our churches are thriving.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not just our three, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, the other aspect of that is we got a lot of these little small community churches that seem to be dwindling, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a struggle that they have to deal with as well.
Yeah.
A lot of churches where this is where Granny went for 80-something years, and she's in her 90s now, and that congregation needs to be there for her.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's one of those things that they're going to dwindle down to nothing, but not because people are leaving the church, but they're going to different congregations. And I've been through that. It's a hard thing to have to deal with, but that's something that we can work together with, because we're not here to preserve the legacy of a building somewhere.
Right.
And that's
God doesn't care about a postal address.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about being the church and not protecting the legacy of the church building. And sometimes that's difficult to do, especially when you've got something that's established or, somewhere where some of these folks have gone to worship their whole lives.
And I love their passion for that little place.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah, I do. And I don't, it's tough. And it's tough because the world has changed. We've talked about that 2 or 3 times already. But, when that church was a one-room schoolhouse, and when you walked, of course there was a church in Timbuktu.
Yes.
But now no one lives there anymore, and they drive to Dickson every day of the week anyway, or they drive to Nashville every day of the week. It's
for all of our talk about this world is not my home, I'm just passing through and all that, we sure get tied to buildings and sentimentality and all that, and part of that I understand, but maybe we do need to kind of be pushed a little bit to say, you know what, it's time to restart, hit the restart button and find a new home, because we're just trying to keep something revived that's just can't keep going.
Well, we might be spreading ourselves too thin across one community, and from a leadership perspective and workers, it's important to evaluate that and realize that you've got small, medium, large churches. They're all going to be a part of that. And we got to kind of understand where everybody's coming from here and work together, I think.
I am not at all against small churches.
I think they can do things big churches can't.
Totally.
Big churches can do things little churches can't.
The most formative time in my life spiritually was probably when I was in a church of about 30 in West Tennessee.
Me too. Yeah.
There's not any prejudice here. And I don't want to sound like a vulture circling here, but sometimes when I drive the little back roads and I pass these buildings that have 7 people worshiping in them, I find myself thinking, what would happen if 5 of those would close today, and that money could be applied to mission work, and those sweet little ladies who are keeping those places alive could be fed for a season and then enabled to help other people.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm wishing, I don't think we're better than them. God's not taking their candlestick. It's none of that stuff. But
no, see, I'm torn because I think everything you said is right on, but at the same time, one of the questions you brought up earlier, would you leave Burns for something else? And I don't ever want to leave Water Street. They'll have to run me off at some point because I don't want to leave.
So I'm a hypocrite on this question.
No, when I drive past those little congregations, I think I would love to go there and encourage them. Love to go there. I've held a gospel meeting for a congregation that had 7 people.
Yeah.
And I remember it to this day, and it's a boost for them, and I love to give them that encouragement. But
I'm a little bipolar on it because in one sense, I think, man, it's kind of like I graduated from a large high school, and then I coached at a really little school, and I saw such benefits in both.
Yeah. There's good in both.
Yeah, there really was. And, I think I would see it very differently if I was in a church of 10 and I'd been there my whole life,
Right.
But, there does have to be approached at some point. How many years have we gone without elders? Are we just in an echo chamber? Are we growing? Or are we just kind of beating our own drum every Sunday? I mean, those kind of things that you do have to, kind of consider.
What does it take to get elders?
Yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tom Rainer's little book, Autopsy of a Deceased Church, is probably the thing to read on this. You can tell a lot about where a church is. But the cool thing is we do serve one who has power over death, and that applies even to churches.
No doubt.
Because this church, Thomas, not that many years ago, Wednesday night, 7 or 8 people, should we close? And Charlie Dolphin was here and said, I'm going to keep on going. And
you talking about
here we are.
This
I'm talking about Burns Church of Christ.
Wow, and look where it's at now.
I mean, that was in my lifetime.
Wow.
So we were a Sunday away from closing.
Wow.
But Charlie said we're not going to do it. And so we're here. We have 2 services.
Good for
we're sitting here having a podcast. So again, I get all the sides of that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how we got here, but this is ministry, right? Like, I grew up at Creve Hall in Nashville. I grew up at Big Church. And I did some internships under Tim Frizzell, and that was some of the best ministry training you could get. I went to Fred Hardeman, some good ministry training there. Went to Harding, some good ministry training there. I've had a lot of cool opportunities, but nothing actually gets you ready for this job.
Nothing.
What do you do all week? How many times have you gotten that question? Everybody likes to say, you only work on Sundays.
Yeah.
Where's the fried chicken?
Yeah.
So, what does your week look like?
I do like the fried chicken.
Oh, yeah.
And
I prefer Mexican, but fried chicken's pretty good.
So for 22 years, my routine was 8:30 to 6, 6 days a week, and that was just the way I worked at the little little sporting goods store I worked at. That's what I was used to, and it was so different for me in ministry because it's different.
It's real different.
Every single day is different, and so it might be a whole night long of sitting with somebody or visiting with people or people showing up at your door and spending a whole afternoon or 3 or 4 hours just talking with somebody. It could be that. There are weeks where I have more office time, and it seems like it comes in waves. It seems like I've got sometimes where I have the weeks where I can, or really even months on end, where I have time to prepare and I can get ahead, and then the next wave comes. And it's like I'm never at the building. Our building's a little different. I'm the only one there.
Right.
So nobody's there with me.
I had several years of that here. So
so if I'm not there, it's, nobody's missing. People don't come to the building looking for me. People come to my house or call me on the phone looking for me. And so I have a lot of personal time with people in waves, and then that'll subside, and I get a lot of office time. So it's different every day. And that's a hard change for me to make.
Yeah.
Because I was used to a set schedule every day, and it's not that.
It's funny. We get kind of evaluated based on our public performances, right? Like people see our sermons and our Bible classes. So a fair amount of our behind-the-scenes times is prep for that, but so much of what we do during the week is nothing related to a Sunday service at all. And I don't think people kind of get how that works.
The more as I've gone on, especially moving to full-time, the sermon prep is a piece of that.
Yeah.
That I really spend so much time doing other things, and that's something that kind of, if I'm prepared and have all those things done ahead of time, man, that just flows on Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, without a whole lot of extra thought.
Yeah.
After I have the time to prepare.
If you've done that beginning work,
Yeah, but I try to stay so far ahead that it's almost like autopilot. Okay, which lesson am I doing today? I've already done it. I've already looked at it. But when we get down to so much of the weekly stuff is dealing with people or dealing with problems or all the other stuff that comes up. That's where the effort's at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I started in ministry as a youth minister at a decent-sized church, and then my first preaching job was at a smaller congregation, and then the last 2 jobs have been at larger congregations. And, there's a difference in both of those. And there's things that you miss about being in the smaller congregation that you wish you could, do in a larger congregation and vice versa. But the biggest difference is, at a larger congregation, you're kind of a figurehead to some degree, and so you're going to meetings and in the community, and you're a larger congregation. You got resources, so I want to talk to the preacher about helping us with this or whatever. I liken it to a friend of mine who's a president at Abilene Christian University. That's all he is a fundraiser, and I feel like sometimes you're just kind of the figurehead that people come to because they want to do this or that. When I was in Missouri, I could in the afternoon just go and sit and drink coffee with people and go to their house and hang out. You don't get to do that as much.
Yeah.
You have a lane, but we have other ministers on staff, so you're not doing everything all the time. You have your lane, and that's kind of the lane you stay in, and there's plenty of work to do, but the work is different. Whereas in a smaller congregation, I was doing a little bit of everything. Yeah. And here you have a very assigned role. Doesn't mean that you don't step out of your lane sometimes to help. So that's different. But at the end of the day, it's always the same in that people don't care what you had to go through during the week. They want a good lesson on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so, I try to get up early, get to the office before people start coming in. And, we don't have a lot of people drop in because, again, at a larger congregation, there's a lot of security, things are locked down. You have to be filtered through. So, if somebody shows up, it's, you don't necessarily get to come through and talk to the youth minister or the preacher, without making an appointment or something, which is kind of impersonal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, it's different. In some ways I like it. In other ways, I feel guilty,
One thing that's kind of hard to try to balance for me is time outside of the church, time inside of the church. And I don't mean that geographically. I mean that, more spiritually, like time I spend in the community trying to find the one lost guy versus the time I spend with the 99. Mm-hmm. And one of the tough dynamics of church work is the 99 pay your salary, and the 99, frankly, want your services. They want to be talked to. They want to be counseled. They want to be held. And they should be. They are part of our ministry. Yeah. But Jesus puts a pretty significant priority on the one.
No doubt.
So trying to manage that, trying to be in the community. A challenge I think we all face is it's easy for preachers to live in their churches and get to this point where we don't know anyone who's not church people. Not literally, but, and so trying to find ways to get to spend time with people who aren't churched yet has been a fun burden,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I feel guilty most of the time. I spend most of my time feeling guilty.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm working on sermons, making sure that I've got that, just, hopefully trying to hit a home run. And
you want to hit a home run every week.
You do. And then you've got, all the other things that come up during the week, which, even though you have your assigned area, there's always something that comes up. And whether it's a, funeral or, the nice thing about a larger congregation is you don't have to go and visit every single person. You can spread that around, but still, somebody's in the hospital, somebody's, passed away, you got a funeral, all good opportunities for ministry. But, like you said, it's different every week. And I like that. I like that it's different every week. I just feel guilty most of the time because I get home and I think, I should have called so-and-so today.
Yes.
And I got so busy that I just didn't even think about it,
Yeah. I never realized how much of ministry was administration.
Yeah.
Especially in a church where you don't have a staff like you do. A part of ministry today may be meeting with a copy repair guy because I'm the guy who's here and whose job it is to be here. So I meet the copy repair guy.
That's the stuff that frustrates me. Actually, that's typically the stuff that I'm decent at or good at. Like if something needs to be fixed or, if somebody's got a broke down car, I can do that. Like, I can help that. Okay.
They will die.
But things that I can go do that.
Yeah.
And the problem is, you can spend a lot of your time doing those things rather, doing the church work rather than doing the work of the church.
Yeah.
Actually evangelizing and doing.
And we'll have people come to Walnut Street that grew up in a church of 50 to 100 people, and they don't understand why, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Why isn't the minister just coming to my house and sitting and drinking coffee? And which, I try to do that, but, or why isn't he sitting with me all day at the hospital when we're having surgery? And, it's just, it's a different dynamic. I'm not saying it's better, because I don't think it is, but it's just a different dynamic. And it's, there's a corporate side of it, unfortunately, even where, there's things to be done, almost only so much time to do it. But I mean, one thing that I have come around to is, when I was a baseball coach, what my leadoff hitter was crucial to what we were trying to do, because he starts everything. If he gets on base, and usually he's a fast kid and he can get on base, he doesn't have to hit it. He can get hit, whatever, just get on base. And he can start things off by, hopefully, if he's fast, he gets on first and he's on third by the time, the number 3 or 4 hitter is up to bat, and we can bring him in, and we've got at least one run. And I think, guys that hit a lot of home runs, they strike out a lot too.
Yeah.
And I found there's value just getting on base. And so I've kind of changed my approach and just said, I'm gonna be like a leadoff hitter. I just want to get on base. If I can just get on base, hopefully that's enough. And I feel like, with God it is. I mean, we're always trying to be people pleasers, but if God's happy with that, then I guess I need to be good with it.
You said something about, the sermon and knocking the home runs all the time. This is one of the things that just never ceases to amaze me. The sermons that I feel like I've done that are the most thorough, that are the most convincing, that are as best as I could possibly do. People will be like, well, I fell asleep today in service. And then some that I don't deliver very good on, that I sit down and feel frustrated about, people get the message. And what a wonderful sermon. That lets me know pretty quick that it's not the person as much as it is the message.
I agree with that.
And it never ceases to amaze me. And I told my wife about this, and we said a few weeks ago, eating lunch with a couple, and she knew that I felt like I didn't do a great job at that sermon that morning, and everybody just talked about how great that was, and she just laughed. It's just amazing. It's not the person as much as it is the message.
I agree with that.
Second service, I felt like I flubbed so hard.
Yeah.
Like first service, I was pretty happy with it. Like it worked.
Same sermon or different sermon?
Same sermon.
Wow, that's crazy.
And, attendance was off. It was time change Sunday.
Yeah.
I was kind of, it's one of those, I sort of felt like I'd had a stroke during Sunday school or something. Words just didn't come out. The points didn't, I had the same manuscript in my hand, but it was not working. And I've had so many people say good things. Okay, God, you're just trying to rub my nose in it now. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I think one thing, another thing people don't get is, as painful as it is to listen to a bad sermon, I think it's far more painful to be the person preaching it when you realize it.
Wow, that's pretty accurate.
It's
agree.
miserable.
I agree. Yeah, and that's like in coaching, you just really couldn't wait after you had a bad performance, a bad game. You couldn't wait for the next one.
Yeah.
You wanted to clear it out of your mind as quickly as possible for your players and everything else. It's the same way with preaching. If I've flopped one Sunday, I can't wait for Sunday to get back around.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hurry up and put that one in the past, and let's, and it motivates you to do even better the next week. And I can't explain that.
Yeah.
I feel like I do the same with all of them, and I walk away going, what was different that one didn't land, or that I did? I mean, I've never figured that out, and it may be just because I'm dense. That's probably it. But it frustrates me because I'm like, why did it rock along so good the week before? And I felt like I just was owning it.
Yeah.
And then I preached this one and didn't do anything different in preparation or anything else, and it just was awful.
Yeah. And it's funny. I never would have believed this either. The things that make a difference in how you feel about a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm convinced fully that the weather that weekend matters more than almost any other human factor, because that's what changes attendance. That's what changes mood. You get that first dreary Sunday of the winter
Yeah.
And everybody walks in and just sort of looks dead.
Yeah.
And you sort of think that the Lord could probably raise Lazarus that Sunday and people would yawn.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'll pay more attention to the weather. I'll look at
You've
that.
never look at your attendance patterns. The first beautiful Sunday in spring either will be the best Sunday ever or they will all be at the lake.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. But I'll look at it on a little more broad scale, too. And say, yeah.
It's funny. It's really funny.
It affects my mood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, growing up in around here, you know, when it gets winter and it starts getting dark at 4:30, and you know, in Abilene, you had the same weather all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, it get dark at 10 o'clock at night, you know, in the dead of summer, and you know, time change maybe 6, and you move here, and it's like it never rained in Abilene. You know, you get here and it's rainy and cold, and it gets dark early, and it affects me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it affects other people, and probably affects, you know, just our attitude.
People ask about winter here. I tell them it's 31 degrees and raining. That's our winter here.
Yeah.
It's good if you're a duck.
Yeah.
Just close enough to make you think it might snow to keep hope alive in the teachers.
Oh, it just.
But to remove it from them at the last possible second.
Those mornings they got to go to school when they think they're going to get snow, it is rough on the teachers and the teachers' spouses. My wife's teachers.
Well, blink twice if you need help.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you guys want to share? This has been just kind of fun. I hope it hadn't been too self-serving or navel-gazing or whatever, but there's so many people who don't really understand what our weird little world's like. There's nothing like this job. I'm not saying it's more important or more holy or more spiritual. No, because I believe God uses an ER nurse every bit as much or more than he uses me. Yeah. But this is special in its special little way. I keep using the word special.
There may be some things that people don't understand when they listen to this, but
yeah,
if you got other ministers, it may be something that helps them. It's certainly been helpful to me to sit down with you guys, so I appreciate you having it.
It's been fun. It's been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you for letting us do it.
You know, when I was an intern, Tim Frizzell used to make us set up tables and chairs, and he said, you never knew how important this will be in your ministry. And I always thought that was just sort of him, you know, abusing the interns, because what point is an intern if you can't sort of abuse them?
That is so true.
But man, how many tables and chairs do you move?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have strong opinions about folding chairs because I like the old school metal ones that I could flop open with one hand. And I really hate the new plastic ones. Even though they're more comfortable, it takes me 2 hands to open them.
Is that right? Okay.
That's another episode as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't care what Bible translation you use, but I care what folding chairs you got. You know,
For sure.
Ministry's a strange thing. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, friends, thanks for listening today. This show is always weird, but you figured that out already. Remember, you didn't pay for it, and you may have gotten what you paid for. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll share it with a friend, and we'll see you next week here on Rough Drafts.
Thanks for listening to Rough Drafts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you are at it, help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review. Until next time, let's keep looking for how God writes his love into our stories.